After years in a relationship, I discovered that my cousin Lauren and my husband Ethan had been having an affair, and even got married. But on their wedding day, I set my revenge in motion and revealed something no one saw coming. I, Caroline, had always believed that loyalty and family bonds were unbreakable, yet Lauren's betrayal shattered my view of family, love, and identity. In the beginning, Ethan and I shared a story that, in my eyes, exuded security and a solid future, filled with heartfelt conversations, shared dreams, and promises of forever. Yet, something eluded me. Ethan's gaze increasingly turned toward Lauren, my cousin, once a childhood friend and inseparable confidant. For years, Lauren and I nurtured a friendship that seemed unshakable, brimming with secrets, confidences, and moments that sealed a special bond. However, slowly, in the unspoken nuances of our relationships, a seed of envy and ambition began to sprout. I never imagined that such a close relationship could hide intentions of stealing the love I thought was mine. But as I noticed gestures, attitudes, and ambiguous remarks, the painful truth emerged. Lauren secretly desired to win over Ethan, betraying not only me but also the very essence of the ties I held dear. The pain overwhelmed me as subtle signs gradually transformed into undeniable evidence. It was impossible not to notice the knowing glances, the overly guarded smiles, and the way Lauren stirred in Ethan feelings that had once been unique between us. There were also the unexplained gifts she received from him, the uncanny coincidences of both being busy at the same times, and the messages Ethan hid whenever I approached him. "You're just imagining things, Caroline," he would say when I confronted him. "Lauren's your cousin, for heaven's sake. We're only that close because she needs my help with work." And in my naivete, I almost believed him. Almost. I remember a family dinner when I noticed Ethan watching Lauren with a look I knew all too well. The very same look he had given me in the early months of our relationship. A look of admiration, desire, and fascination. My stomach churned, but I forced a smile as I cut into my steak with more force than necessary, as if that piece of meat embodied my anguish. "Have you seen the new movie by that French director?" I asked, desperately trying to shift the conversation. No one had seen it. The conversation quickly died. Just like a part of me. That revelation hit me like a storm, blending fury, sadness, and a sense of helplessness that made it hard to believe the carefully built world around me was crumbling. I spent countless nights awake, reliving every moment, every suspicious gesture, every unexplained absence. The tears had lost their meaning. They had become as constant as my own breath. Yet even with my heart scarred by betrayal, something inside me ignited with the determination not to be defeated, to fight the manipulation that was stealthily seeping into our family ties. "Swallow your tears, Caroline," I told myself each morning as I looked in the mirror. "You were not born to be a victim." Confirmation came one Sunday afternoon when, by accident, I glimpsed messages on Ethan's phone while he was in the shower. There, as clear as day, lay the evidence of his betrayal. Messages that went far beyond friendship, plans that completely excluded me, words of love once meant for me. I left the phone exactly where it was and walked out of the apartment without a word. 3 days later, I received the news. They were officially together. "I'm sorry you found out this way," Ethan texted, as if canceling an ordinary dinner. "These things happen. We didn't plan on falling in love. Really, it must be hard to plan an affair amid so many commitments." I replied with a cold detachment that was fast becoming my new norm. "I hope you both are very happy with the legacy of lies you'll carry forever." What followed was even more astonishing. An invitation to their wedding, less than 6 months later. An elegant invitation adorned with golden lettering and a smiling photo of the couple. My aunt, Lauren's mother, insisted I attend. "Family is family, Caroline. You grew up together. Don't let a man ruin that." As if the problem were the man, not the betrayal by a cousin I once considered a sister. I decided to go, not out of weakness or forgiveness, but because something inside me knew that this would be the perfect stage for what I needed to do. The turning point came unexpectedly and dramatically during Lauren and Ethan's wedding, a ceremony that, for others, symbolized the perfect union of two in love, but for me became a platform for revelations. The festive atmosphere meant to evoke happiness and harmony, concealed beneath its subtle veneer an intense anguish and the burning need to expose the truth. I chose a red dress, not by coincidence, as it was the color Lauren despised, and prepared meticulously for that day. Every gesture, every step, every look had been rehearsed. I smiled at everyone, greeted distant relatives with warm embraces, and complimented the decor. "You look so strong, dear," murmured the aunts in tones that barely masked pity. I merely nodded, fully aware that they had no idea what true strength meant. The moment the church bells signaled the union, months of pent-up emotion finally burst forth. I stood up, hesitant yet filled with conviction, and declared that silence could no longer reign. The minister had just asked if anyone had anything to say against the union. "I do," I announced in a voice that no longer sounded like my own. It was firmer, more resolute. A deathly silence fell over the church. I saw Lauren's face drain of color, while Ethan looked at me with a mix of surprise and dread. "I'm not here to speak of your love, born of betrayal and deceit. Everyone already knows or suspects that," I began, feeling each word flow like a river breaking a dam. "I'm here to reveal what you, Ethan, don't know." Every word I uttered in those long declarations, laden with both direct accusation and the outpouring of long-buried feelings, spoke not only of Lauren's betrayal, but also of the pain of being deceived by those I loved, and the urgent need to reclaim my identity. "Lauren is not who you think she is," I continued. "She isn't merely the woman who stole my husband. She's the same woman who 2 years ago caused the accident that left our grandmother confined to a wheelchair after driving drunk at a party. The same woman who manipulated our grandfather's will to claim the bulk of the inheritance, leaving our Aunt Mary nearly destitute. The same woman who maintained an affair with Cousin Julia's husband for over a year." Murmurs swelled with each revelation. I saw some people rise, shocked, while others remained frozen in their seats. I stayed silent for far too long, believing that family always protected family. Today I understand that true protection lies in exposing what is rotten, in cutting the evil at its root. Ethan, you are not the first man she's stolen, and likely won't be the last. Your loyalty is solely to yourself. In the ensuing quiet tumult, the atmosphere shifted profoundly. Ethan, torn by inner conflict, vacillated between remorse and a desperate need for explanations, while Lauren struggled to mask her guilt behind a facade of indifference. "It's a lie," Lauren finally cried, her voice trembling. "You're just jealous. So jealous that I have all the proof right here," I retorted, producing from my purse a folder filled with documents, photos, and printed conversations. Copies for anyone who wishes to see. The truth, unlike the character of some, is transparent. I handed the folder to Lauren's mother, who opened it with trembling hands. Her face turned to a mask of horror as she scanned the evidence. "My daughter, how could you?" she whispered, her eyes fixed on Lauren with a blend of disappointment and disbelief. Every word I spoke resonated with those present, shattering long-held trust and exposing the hidden cracks behind familiar smiles and gestures. That revelation was the spark that allowed me, Caroline, once known as calm, thoughtful, and receptive, to embrace the truth and reveal it forcefully, even if it meant breaking the illusions that once upheld the idea of family and loyalty. "Excuse me for interrupting the ceremony," I concluded with a calm that even surprised me. "But you deserved to know who you're dealing with. As for me, my part is done. Freeing oneself from lies is victory enough." I left the church without a backward glance, feeling every eye on me. There were no shouts, no dramatic scenes, just the raw, unvarnished truth hanging in the air, heavy as lead. The wedding, of course, did not continue. I later learned that Ethan canceled everything and vanished for weeks. Lauren even attempted to sue me for defamation, but backed down when she realized I possessed all the evidence. After that fateful moment at the altar, the days that followed were marked by deep introspection and a reordering of priorities. I began to view the past from a new perspective, understanding that true freedom does not lie in maintaining ties that imprison us, but in recognizing and valuing one's own identity. I moved to Chicago, started a new job, and forged new friendships. The physical distance helped heal wounds that once seemed incurable. "You shouldn't have gone so far," my mother said during one of our video calls. "The family misses you." "I had to, Mom," I replied with the certainty of someone who had finally found her path. Sometimes, distance is the only way to see things clearly. The pain I felt transformed into the fuel for a fresh start, propelling me to build relationships based on honesty and mutual respect, far removed from manipulation and hidden agendas. The experience taught me that sometimes we must let go of what we believe is eternal in order to embrace the truth, no matter how painful, and in doing so, allow ourselves to evolve. I met people who had no idea about my past, who saw me simply as I was in that moment, strong, determined, and free. It was liberating to be seen that way, without the weight of the past or the shadow of betrayal. I enrolled in a photography course, something I had always wanted to do but never dared, and began capturing the world through my lens, noticing beauty in details that had once gone unnoticed. Each photograph became a fragment of my new identity, built day by day, free from the expectations of others. I also took up running, something I never imagined doing. The first few weeks were grueling. My body protested, my lungs burned, my legs trembled. Yet there was an indescribable satisfaction in pushing my limits, in feeling sweat stream down my face as my mind freed itself from recurring thoughts of the past. With every mile, a layer of heartache seemed to peel away, carried off by the wind and dissolved by the exertion. Of course, there were moments of vulnerability, nights when loneliness weighed heavier than usual, mornings when I woke up with that familiar emptiness in my chest. There were days when I found myself gazing at old photos, recalling moments that once appeared perfect, questioning whether it had all been an illusion from the start. On several occasions, I even drafted long messages to Ethan, a blend of venting and questions, but I never sent them. I learned that not every pain needs an audience, and not every feeling requires sharing. Even these moments of relapse became crucial chapters in my journey of self-discovery. Every solitary conversation after that incident turned into a lesson, a time to reflect on the value of self-love, the courage to face reality, and the power to transform betrayal into strength. I realized that the most powerful revenge is not in the pain inflicted on another, but in the inner transformation that occurs when we free ourselves from toxic relationships and expectations that only bring suffering. "You could have destroyed their lives and moved on," a friend once said, surprised that I chose not to retaliate further. "Why stop at the church?" "Because it wasn't about destroying lives. It was about reclaiming mine," I replied. Revealing the truth was necessary for me to find peace. The rest, that's on them. That episode became a turning point, allowing me to recognize my vulnerabilities and transform every tear and every sigh into symbols of resilience. Building a new path depended on my ability to forgive, not for others' sake, but for my own, as a gesture of self-love that propels me toward a life rooted in authenticity. A year after the incident, I received a letter from Ethan. He had separated from Lauren a few months after the failed wedding, following more lies and betrayals. "You tried to warn me," he wrote. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I regret even more everything I did to you." I read the letter several times, searching for what I felt. There was no anger, no bitterness, only a sorrowful understanding of human frailty. I replied with few words. "I hope you find your way, just as I have found mine. Some lessons are painful, but necessary." We never spoke again. There was no need. Our story had ended long before that exchange. As for Lauren, I later learned from relatives that she had moved overseas, fleeing judgment and disapproving glances. Part of the family defended her, accusing me of exposing private matters cruelly, while others admitted that the truth, no matter how painful, needed to come out. The divisions still persist, scars of an episode that no one has ever completely forgotten. Today, as I recall that wedding and my revelation, I understand that that moment was the seed of an irreversible change in how I view relationships. I learned that even when blood ties seem unbreakable, it is essential to have the courage to confront the truths that surface over time. Recently, I received an invitation to my grandmother's 80th birthday. Yes, the same grandmother whom Lauren had left confined to a wheelchair. It was a moment of decision, to face the whole family again, or to maintain the distance I had established. After days of reflection, I decided to go, not for Lauren, who was likely there, nor for anyone who had doubted me, but for myself, to prove that that environment no longer held power over me. When I arrived at the party, I felt every eye on me, some curious, others apprehensive, as if expecting another dramatic scene. I greeted everyone politely, embraced my grandmother for what felt like an eternity, and sat at a quiet table, observing the family dynamics with the detached insight of someone who no longer belonged, yet still understood. Lauren later appeared, accompanied by her new fiancé, a middle-aged man with a distant gaze and a rehearsed smile. Our eyes met briefly. I felt no hatred, only a melancholy understanding of who she truly was. She quickly looked away, feigning intense interest in a nearby conversation. I smiled inwardly. Her evasive glance spoke more than words ever could. At a recent dinner with new friends, someone asked about my family. "It's complicated," I replied with a smile devoid of bitterness. "Let's just say I learned to separate kinship from loyalty." "What do you mean?" a friend pressed, clearly curious. "Some people are born into our lives, others we choose. I've learned that true family isn't always defined by blood, but by actions, respect, and honesty. I have relatives I barely recognize as family and friends who are more loyal than many cousins," I explained, sipping my wine calmly. This experience awakened in me the importance of setting healthy boundaries, cultivating friendships and relationships, founded on mutual loyalty, and cherishing every step that allowed me to bloom, even in the face of adversity. By turning pain into strength, I discovered each day that I could reinvent my life, honoring every scar as an essential part of my journey toward a new definition of love and freedom. 3 years have passed since that afternoon at the church. Today, I have a fulfilling new job, an apartment that reflects who I am, and relationships that neither diminish nor manipulate me. Occasionally, I hear family news through my mother, the only one with whom I maintained close contact. Lauren returned to the country and is engaged again. Ethan moved to a small town and started his own business. Life went on, as it always does. As for me, I carry the lessons from that episode like a map to never lose my way again. I learned to recognize the first signs of manipulation, to value honesty above all else, and most importantly, never to let anyone else define my worth or my truth. "You seem like a different person," my mother remarked during her last visit. "There's a strength in you I've never seen before." "I'm not a different person, Mom," I replied as we watched the sunset from the balcony of my apartment. "I've simply discovered who I truly am." Lauren and Ethan's betrayal was painful, but today I recognize it as liberating. Sometimes we must lose what we once thought essential to discover our true selves. In my case, I lost the illusion of a perfect family, a relationship based on false promises, and a naive view of loyalty. In exchange, I gained myself, and no betrayal can ever take that away. In the end, my revenge wasn't exposing the truth at the altar, though that moment was necessary. My real revenge was rebuilding my life on stronger foundations, learning to be happy without depending on others' approval, and turning pain into wisdom. And that, I believe, is the most powerful form of overcoming. Not merely surviving the storm, but learning to dance in the rain. Now, when I look back, I see not a victim but a woman who had the courage to break with expectations, to confront lies and to follow her own path, even when that path seemed frightening and lonely. The Caroline who once wept over betrayal now smiles in the face of the freedom she has won. And that perhaps is the greatest revelation of all, discovering that we are far stronger and more capable than we ever imagined. So if you ever face a betrayal that feels too immense to bear, remember, it isn't the end. It could be the beginning of a powerful journey of self-discovery. Pain has a purpose when we learn to turn it into fuel for our evolution. Every tear shed can transform into determination. Every sleepless night into clarity about what truly matters. Some say time heals all wounds, but I disagree. Time alone heals nothing. It only distances us from the events. True healing comes from the decisions we make, the boundaries we set, and the self-love we nurture. It comes from the courage to look within and acknowledge that even when hurt, we are still whole. Others' betrayals say more about them than about us. Not long ago, I found an old photo of me with Ethan and Lauren, taken at a family barbecue months before the betrayal came to light. Looking at that picture, I felt no anger, no bitterness, only gratitude for the path I've traveled since, for the woman I've become through adversity. That smiling Caroline in the photo had no idea what was to come, but today's Caroline knows exactly where she is and where she wants to go. True freedom begins when we decide that no betrayal will define who we are or what we deserve. When we realize that we are the authors of our own story, not mere supporting characters in someone else's tale. When we understand that our scars are not marks of weakness, but symbols of our remarkable capacity to heal. And that decision alone is a victory. A quiet, intimate triumph, powerful enough to change the course of a lifetime.